All right. On today's episode on Off the Record, we have probably one of the most creative people we had a chance to meet to date. He's the founder and creative director at word of mouth and experiential marketing agency called the Idea Generation Company, Saul Colt. He's also a pro speaker, consultant specializing in stunt marketing, customer experience, and community building. He was one of the first international employees of Zipcar, helped launch the service in Canada, also worked at FreshBooks, did cool work for Rogers, Xero.com, and other great companies that are not on this list, but we'll ask him about. So nice to meet you, and great to have you on Off the Record.
Oh, thank you so much. This is exciting.
So how did you start with all this marketing stunts, doing that for companies? What happened?
So it's an incredibly long story. The short version is, from about, 1999 to 2005, 2008 or so, I ran a comic book publishing company that I owned and started. I wrote books and marketed them and pretty much, did all the business side of it. And I was selling superhero comic books that, were not as well known as Batman and Superman. And I was charging $1 more than Batman and Superman for my books. So I had to get hyper creative and really do crazy things to stand out. So people would, one, even take a look at the books, and two, hopefully give them a chance and buy them and keep my little business afloat. So I did all sorts of stuff. We did scavenger hunts through cities during, major comic book conventions. We did, private parties that, we created the air of exclusivity when really anybody who showed any glimmer of excitement to come would get in. But, we created a myth around this little publishing company, and it was all based on word of mouth. It was all based on stunts. It was all based on sort of hype and all sorts of things. And I think one of the things that I've said this many times. One of the things that makes me the best word of mouth marketer in North America, if not the world, is I'm not classically trained. I've read every book. I've read every marketing book. I've done all that stuff. I've had, senior positions at major companies, and I always stand out, and my ideas are always a little different because I'm not running them through the same filter as everybody else. And that doesn't mean they're always right, and it doesn't mean they're always the best idea, but I guarantee you my ideas are always going to be different, and different stands out. And that's, something I'm very proud of, and something I take a lot of effort to make sure that my stuff is stands out and isn't derivative. So, but it all started from, basically survival of trying to get my first company off the ground. And I was able to publish comic books for 10 years, and I was able to sell the company. It wasn't like a tech company with 10 times multiples and things like that, but it counts as an exit, and being able to do something fun for a decade is always a good thing.
And you didn't have experience in marketing before. This was just something that out of necessity you had to figure out.
I did have experience in marketing. I grew up in a family business, but it certainly wasn't at scale. And everything that I'm known for now, and everything that I preach, and all my structure and formulas and everything really came from that time in my comic book experience, because nobody told me I couldn't do something, and nobody told me that this was wrong. And not everything worked, of course, but more things worked than didn't, because it was sort of like sheer force and hyper creativity.
What's your biggest PR stunt?
Biggest PR stunt?
You did a lot.
I've done so many, and it's funny. And I'm going to sound like a douchebag when I say this, and I apologize ahead of time, but I've forgotten half the stuff I've done. I think the one that is probably the most controversial and gotten, sort of some attention was, I've worked for some of the most recognizable brands in the world, but I also worked with a lot of brands that nobody had heard of until I worked with them, or a lot of brands that, people wouldn't consider very sexy. But I did a project with a data research company to, it was all around the idea of bad ads and why you should be testing your content and why you should be testing your ads, because it's really hard to determine, by eyesight, what is going to click with people and what isn't. So we created a series of really, they were beautifully, conceptualized ads, but they were for products that were supposed to spark anger in people or controversy. So one of the products was a company called Thwongs, which were thongs for babies. Another product was a car company that was just for women, and it was incendiary. It was a pink car with like a makeup station inside of it and all sorts of things. And the most controversial was a beer company called Amber Alert Lager, and the image was an older man with a very young woman. The tagline was, I think it was young for those who don't want to wait, or something like that. And really great ads, and we put them out there to get people to be angry, and then the payoff was, this is why you should be testing your ads. But the it got a lot of attention in media, but it got attention in media because people thought these were real brands. And the funny thing was, I look at these ads and I thought that we were really pushing the envelope and people were going to like riot in the streets. But because we set up real websites, we set up everything, and we had 5 or 6 calls for people who want to distribute the beer nationally. The diaper company, we had people inquiring if there were other colors available and all sorts of things. So it really showed that there is someone for every product, and you just have to sort of nail your personas and targeting pretty well, and you can almost be successful with anything.
How did you sell that internally to the company? Like, how did you, that big of a thing got buy-in?
So it was a company I had a bit of a year-long relationship with. We'd done some less controversial projects. Selling what I do is hard all the time because, and I've told this story many times, but I worked with a major, Fortune 500 recognizable brand. And I came up with what I thought was one of the better ideas I've ever had. And the VP of marketing said, I love this idea, but we'll never do it because
Was it FreshBooks?
No, it wasn't FreshBooks.
Because I thought I remember you had this idea with FreshBooks where you were trying to slim down one of their, was mascot?
Oh, so they had an animated character as their mascot, and the CEO said, well, we want to kill the mascot. So I pitched an idea where we literally kill the mascot, and in all the ads, he would get slimmer, thinner and thinner until he was in a chair and then an IV, and then basically fall over and die. And we would, say, oh my God, our mascot died, please make donations to this charity. And oh, by the way, now our new mascot is a squirrel. I still think that's hilarious, and I didn't get to do that, but somebody should, because it's I love that.
I thought
idea.
It was amazing. I've never seen anybody doing that.
Yeah. But this other idea, I pitched it to a major company, and the VP said, I love this idea. It's hilarious, but I'm not going to do it because, and he basically, I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said, I make about $350,000 a year. Jobs like this aren't everywhere. And I'm not going to put my neck on the line for something like this when things are fine. And, he basically said that it just wasn't worth it to him personally, never mind the company. And that's something I face all the time. So,
can you share that idea, Saul? What was the idea about?
Nah, I'd like to try to do this one day for somebody, so I'm going to keep it under my hat.
No,
But
no sweat.
but you know, I hear variations of that story all the time. So it's interesting because I'm really trying to get people to push the limits of their brands. Controlled experiments. We're not reckless. We sort of, we do a lot of research. We talk to clients. We sort of know what we can get away with. One of the things I always preach is knowing where that line of good taste is and crossing it only by, 2 baby steps. But, if you're not crossing the line of good taste, and good taste maybe isn't the right word, but you kind of get what I'm talking about.
Yes.
If you don't cross that line, you're not making memories, you're not creating conversations, you're not even creating outrage. If people aren't outraged, if their feathers aren't ruffled, you're not doing anything interesting, and you're completely, forgettable. And forgettable is the worst thing a brand could be ever. Unless you're Coke or Pepsi, and you just have to put out a plain billboard with your logo on it. That's one thing, but so few companies ever reach that plateau, and especially younger companies and upstart companies. You've got to be, creating just huge fans for your product, and the way you create fans is by creating an environment where people want to see themselves inside of your company. And I don't see a lot of companies do that because, whether they know it's right or wrong, it takes a certain level of moxie. And I always tell people, I'm your scapegoat. If it doesn't work, you fire me. You're protected. You blame it on the crazy consultant who came in to shake things up. It's like I've actually never been fired for a project sort of, blowing up in my face. I've been fired for wearing out my welcome. I tend to max out at 24 months with brands, and they tend to get tired of me and my energy and stuff like that. But man, you can do some amazing things in 24 months. You can change a whole company. You can create, something that people talk about and live on well past I'm gone. And there needs to be more brands willing to take chances, because taking money from a VC is a risk. So why aren't you taking risks to actually push your brand forward? And now is such an opportunity. We've all been inside for a year. We've all been sort of, wondering when the world's going to return to normal, whether it does or doesn't. But man, the appetite for some experiences right now is so high, and brands are still kind of playing it safe and not really willing to do anything, or the great brands are willing to do stuff, but those middle of the road kind of risk-taking brands are being far too cautious. And what's going to happen is their competitors and other people in their space are going to pass them, because I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday about a sexual wellness product like vibrators and condoms and stuff, and they predict that once everybody's got their second vaccination, there's going to be this crazy, boom, similar to the sexual revolution of the 70s. And they're gearing up. They're gearing up big time, because people just, unless you were in a relationship going into the pandemic, there's a lot of people who haven't touched another human in a while. And they think this is going to be the best thing, to happen to their business in a long time. There needs to be more brands that are forward thinking and are looking at opportunities and trying to jump on them before they happen.
Who's doing a great job right now out of the brands that you see?
There's the companies that are always doing great jobs. Like Nike is one of my favorite brands in the world. It's
you like Porsches. I know you like what Porsche stands for a long time.
Porsche is another one of my favorite brands. I think Porsche does an amazing job, because Porsche is a really fascinating company. It's the only company I can think of that they're looking forward. They're creating electric vehicles. They're trying to sell as many new cars as possible. but they also know, I read this stat a while ago, it's some crazy number, like 72% of all Porsches ever made are still on the road. So they really, they really know they've got two audiences. They've got the people that are the classic lovers and the people that are the new lovers. And the classic lovers probably don't make them any money or very little money, but they spend just as much time and effort nurturing that audience because, those people talk. They have friends, they show off their cars, they might buy a new one. Eventually it's things. So it's such an interesting thing, but you think of, I can't think of another brand that, and maybe others do, I'm just not familiar with it, but they just open up their parking lots on Sunday mornings and say, everybody with a car, come and let's hang out and be friends. They're not trying to sell you anything. They're not trying to do anything. When I look at, brands like Nike, who do all these amazing collaborations, they did a Ben and Jerry shoe that actually came in an ice cream, tub shoebox and things like that. Those are really interesting things. When I think of, there's a bunch of amazing smaller brands that just do really interesting things. I think, anybody, and I realize that, the last year and the pandemic and everything sort of put a halt on it, but anyone who really understands the power of in-person marketing and bringing communities together, that's what creates longevity of your brand, and that's what creates stickiness of your brand. I buy Gap jeans. Why do I buy Gap jeans? I couldn't tell you. They fit me okay. They're everywhere. I know that every 4 hours there's going to be a 40% off sale. So I could just, go to the food court, wait for that email, and boom, if they're not on sale now, they'll be on sale at the end of my drink and sort of thing. But I don't have any affinity towards that brand. They're just a brand I wear because, they serve a purpose. But there's so many other brands that I have a real affinity to. And, I'm hyper loyal to, it's like, and more brands need to be thinking about that hyper loyal, because guess what? I could buy jeans anywhere. And if all of a sudden someone said, oh, you should go check out Levi's, they're doing cool things, maybe I buy a pair and the Gap has lost me forever because I don't have a relationship with that brand. And maybe pardon me?
It's a commodity.
Mm-hmm, exactly. But man, I've got I buy this watermelon juice. It's a company called Blue Monkey, and it's not cheap. It's delicious. It's like real, like it's just pressed watermelons and maybe sugar. I don't know. Who knows? But I buy it at a health food store, so I assume it's good for me. But it's like I'm crazy loyal to this brand because and I'm a guy who actually, if I like something, I talk about it. And they saw me talking about it online. They didn't offer me anything free, which I don't care about. I don't need people to pander to me, but just the fact that they acknowledged me and it wasn't a blanket acknowledgement where they're just like, thank you. They actually looked through some of my Instagram feed and they're like, hey, we saw you like this, and this. That's cool. Probably took them 30 seconds. They probably hadn't thought about me since that moment, but in that one moment of time, they made me feel special. So I already love the product. I'm already, paying for a premium product that I probably don't need. And they took 30 seconds just to acknowledge me. So now I have a brand affinity for that product where I was already telling people about it. I was already tweeting about it and sharing it because it's something I'm passionate about. And now they have loyalty on me. Not that I was going to sway, but they, it literally, it takes so little to make somebody feel good. And you make somebody feel good, they start talking about your product more. I tend to oversimplify what I do. There's actually a lot of science behind it, and there's a lot of process and things like that. But man, it all really just comes down to validation and making somebody feel good. It's when I started keynote speaking conferences like in, I don't know, 2008, 2009, whenever it was, the first keynote I went out with was making love to your customers. And I did this 45-minute talk breaking down how, building a customer relationship is exactly the same as dating. And I still feel that, to this day. I've retired that talk because, you got to come up with something new every, 7-8 months to stay fresh and stuff like that. But I truly live by that, man. Like it's just all about, it's like, nice shirt, nice hair. You look nice today. How was your day? These are the things that push things. And the shame of it is that our customer expectation is so low, and brand expectation is so low that, like, literally just like an attaboy from somebody goes, like, I could ride for months off of that, because it's just, it's thing. And I've got a reasonable following and all that stuff. So I can see how people would maybe spend time with me. But, I talk about this all the time when it comes to influencers and stuff like that. The person with 300 followers could be just as important as the person with 300,000 if those 300 are targeted to your product, and that 300,000 person, they may, it could be all bots. And
Saul, you talk about it in your speech where this is the biggest misconception with influencers you're talking about right now. Like, because people think influencers are 100,000, million, 2 million, and this is what you need.
Well, that's the lazy way of looking at influencers, just by numbers, because real influence is getting somebody to do something. Just tweeting and people not seeing it or not actioning on something isn't actual influence. So, people love celebrities, and I love all that stuff. I eat all that pop culture and gossip and all that stuff up. But a celebrity is never going to get me to buy a product, because one, I know they're being paid for it. And two, I know that, they probably don't really care for this stuff. A great example is Dax Shepard, who's got the Armchair Expert podcast. I like the podcast. I like Dax. I don't know him personally, but, I like listening to his interview style. But man, it eats away at me when he reads these ads. One of their sponsors is this like farm fresh egg subscription company. And he talks about it like this is going to change the world, and eggs are the greatest thing. And he can't get enough eggs. But if you listen to his interviews, when he's not reading the ad, he talks about being allergic to eggs. And eggs are like the one thing he doesn't eat. So he's kind of bullshitting you in the ad read and telling you that, he loves this thing. And then when he's off, when he's speaking casually to a guest and the topic of food comes up, the first thing he always throws up is, I hate eggs, and stuff like that. So
this is how you not do that.
There's a real disconnect.
Like yeah.
So what celebrities have is audience, not influence. They've got this big amplification, device, but they don't really have influence, because, it's, for real influence, you need know, like, and trust. You need to know the person. You need to like the person. You need to trust them. So, when it comes to Dax Shepard talking about eggs, certainly I don't trust him, because he's completely said, I don't like eggs in 1 minute. And then 45 minutes later, when they play the pre-recorded ad, he's like, oh man, I'm rubbing eggs in my chest hair right now. Like, it makes it sound like eggs are his life force. So don't trust him. I don't really know him except for a thing. And, but I do like him. So, there's kind of 1.5 out of the 3. For real influence, you need all 3. And that's why that person with 300 followers who, those people are all targeted. They love this person. They believe them. They're honest and stuff like that. They could actually push 300, or let's say they could push 150 people to a website where someone with 100,000 untargeted followers for your brand may send nobody to your website, may not start any conversation. So, and brands have audience just the same way celebrities do. So when you find those people with 300 followers or 3,000 followers or 10,000 followers that are targeted for you, they're the expert in some weird niche that is really great for your product or brand. You can make them the celebrity. You can amplify them on your platform. So you've got both platforms going, where a lot of brands, when they work with influencers, it's just, you stay over there. We're going to borrow your audience, and never the two shall meet. When people know these influencers are getting paid, so why don't you just call it a partnership and share the content on both platforms? You're doing as much for that person as they are for you. And I'm a big fan, proponent of influencer marketing. I just think 80% of it, the way it's done now, is done incorrectly.
It's because you're going for the big people or with large audiences that are not very well targeted, and they will promote you for 24 hours and then they're gone. And the conversion is going to be similar or less than smaller influencers or people with 500 followers, but with more targeted, who will push you for a week instead of 24 hours.
Not even a week. You find a super fan of your product, someone like me and this watermelon juice, I'll talk about it for months. And I have no expectation of getting paid. I don't that's not important to me. What's important to me is, it's like, show me a little validation, give me some shine. You want to float me some free product, I'll take some free product. And I'm not asking these people to give me free product. I'm just using it as an excuse. But, most people know that celebrities are just in it for the money. And especially when you see, after that 24-hour bump, they're on to the next product, or they're on to a similar product or something like that. Like there has to be real humanity in, if the influencer stuff is going to work like for real. So that's why I always say you find your super fans and elevate their presence and double down on them. You can mix in a celebrity here and there. I think it's, I think there's way better ways to spend your money, but if that's part of your brand or whatever, that's fine. But don't make that your whole plan, because you're going to be sitting in a boardroom wondering where that $100,000 went and what the results were and stuff like that.
So you're known for in-person events, PR stunts, marketing stunts. Have you seen so far anything that comes close or that is a reasonable alternative right now online? Everybody online. We don't really have a choice at the moment. It's changing. It is going to change later this year, 2022. But at the moment, and last year, have you seen anything that was like, hey, this is really cool? Somebody cracked that online thing where you still can connect, you still can do something interesting from a marketing perspective online. Have you seen anything like that?
So first of all, just to backtrack a little bit, I do tons of stuff online. My forte is I like to start something in the real world, push people online, and then pour gas on it online so it grows and expands. I don't like being the person online just screaming, look at me, look at me, look at me, although I do that with my personal brand. But for a company, I think it's really important to have your fans or a neutral person start the conversation. But you have to give them something if you want them to start the conversation. Then the brand can step in and sort of amplify it. But who's doing things in real life? I think there was some, I did some really interesting things online, not to pat myself on the back, but, we ran Zoom Hollywood Squares with companies. We ran Family Feud online. It was a way of keeping their community alive and bringing a bunch of people in. And we developed all these questions related to their industry, their company, all sorts of things, which we kept the community going online. But as far as people doing really interesting stuff, Absolutely. There was I saw some conferences that I thought transitioned to fully digital really well. I thought South by Southwest, which did a good job, which is kind of funny because if you're familiar with South by Southwest, sort of the draw of South by Southwest is the content that they put out is like the lowest thing on the list. It's all about the parties and it's all about, the accidental conversations on the street corners and stuff like that. But I thought they kept their brand and their platform going pretty strong. I've seen, a bunch of people do some interesting stuff with AI and putting their products in all sorts of different places. As far as actual examples, I'm always looking forward. So I can't really, nothing's jumping out at me because nothing stood out immensely. I think that there was car companies that did some interesting stuff, building cars, test drives online. I actually saw I saw a car dealership in St. Louis who set up cars with 7 different cameras, and you could test drive the car from your home, where they basically put a camera in every inch of the car and walked you through all the features, so you weren't driving it, but you kind of looked like you were in the passenger seat. Like there were some people who got really creative, and that's what you have to do. So and I say this all the time, I'm not the only person who has great ideas. I'm not going to pretend that you can't do this stuff without me. My mission, if I have one, is to get people to take chances. The difference between me and somebody else, I've been in boardrooms and whatever, where, I'm a big fan of best idea always wins. And my idea isn't, that isn't always the best idea. I'd say I'm there 85 to 90% of the time because I have skills and I have, ways of coming up with things. And I've sort of mastered this quick, brilliance sort of skill set. But, the least paid employee can have a flash of brilliance, and you should run with that idea. The difference between me and that least paid employee that's brilliant that one time is I'm brilliant consistently, and I know how to be creative, and I know how to come up with these ideas, and I know how to read situations and read customers and all these things. So it's that consistency, and that always brilliant is what people are paying for. But again, I'm not the only person. If you don't want to work with me, you should be still trying to push the limits of what you're doing. You should be trying to break out of the traditional molds because, like I said before, it's that 2 steps over the line. That's where those memories are made. That's where those conversations are made. And the companies who do it get remembered. The companies who don't do that stuff don't get remembered. So, there's a hotel and I'm blanking where they are, but all their room keys are student passes of celebrities. So you might have like George Clooney's high school, ID card,
real one.
Yeah, they find them online and grab, it's like all those you'll never believe what celebrities look like as kids or whatever. Like they find that blog post and they make the cards as these student IDs. So not only is it just something funny to look at, but they found that these people were keeping the cards in their wallet, which these hotel keys cost pennies. Most people throw them out or don't give them back anyways. So at least, make it interesting. So they hold in their wallet, they show their friend, they go to a restaurant, they're carded for booze. Maybe they're going to show this George Clooney thing. It starts a conversation. Where'd you get it? Oh, I stayed at this really cool hotel. I don't know why they have these cards, but man, it's cool. Oh, cool. What's the name of that hotel? Write it down, and maybe they go back and they check it online. That was not my idea. I think it's a brilliant idea. And these are the things that brands have to do. Every opportunity to start a conversation should be jumped on, and I'm willing to take enormous risks because that's my personal brand. That's where I'm comfortable with. Companies hire me to shoulder the risks for them. But, one of the other things I'm very good at is it doesn't matter what my level of risk is. It actually doesn't even matter what the management's level of risk is. It all comes down to what are your customers willing, what's their appetite, and what are they willing to do? And that's where you start when you're coming up with how far are we going to push the line? Because, you've got to figure out where that line is for your customers. Still cross it, but you got to know where that line is, or it's a non-starter. You could do something really dangerous or a thing. That's why I tell people they should work with either me or someone like me. And like I said,
so how did you do the baseball cards at FreshBooks? FreshBooks, conservative company. They're first of all, they're in Canada. All Canadians, most Canadian companies are conservative. Then they're accounting software. It's the most boring thing ever. You were there for a long time, and you did the baseball cards. And how did you sell the idea first to the management?
I don't even think I sold the idea. I think I just did it, And, at FreshBooks, I worked there for 6 years spread over about 11. I did three stops at FreshBooks. I would, sort of do 2 years.
On and off.
I'd either get tired of them or they get tired of me. And, then somebody would ask me to come back. And, it was sort of like one of those situations where you always keep going back to your ex. But, I had developed enough internal credibility that I'm not sure that we even, sold that idea internally. We just did it. So, for people, if you're not familiar with it, South by Southwest, big, technology music festival, we created a series of 21 baseball cards, and we called them the Internet All-Stars. And the people on the front of the card, there was kind of 3 celebrities. We had Chris Brogan, Tina Roth-Eisenberg, and Gary Vaynerchuk. This was before anyone even knew who Gary was. And then the rest of the cards were customers. And customers of FreshBooks. They were Internet All-Stars. We knew they were going to be at South by Southwest. And of course, because I'm an egomaniac, one of the cards was of me. And there was a checklist card. So we created these packs of baseball cards. There was 3 cards in every pack. No gum, because that was going to be too expensive. But you got 3 cards and a checklist, so you could see how many cards there were and thing. And we put these cards in every one of the opening packages when you got your badge. And we also just had thousands of them that we handed out to everybody whenever we saw them. So, and the people. The reason that we did regular people, non-celebrities, customers on the card is it's twofold. One, we knew the people were going to be there, so we gave each one of them 1,000 cards, told them to use them as business cards, because they would tell the story of FreshBooks way better than we would. Again, no like trust. Oh, how'd you get those cards? That's the greatest business card I've ever seen. That's really cool. Tell me about it. But on the back of it, so the front of the card was the photo, the name. It said Internet All-Stars, and had a small FreshBooks logo. The back of the card was all that person's contact information, what they were great at. This person's a graphic designer, this person's a web developer, whatever. And we did it, and we created a bit of a stir running around because people wanted the whole set, and people were starting the conversation. We had 20 or 19 other people selling our product for us, probably way more earnestly than we could sell the product, because we did something nice for them. We gave them these cards. We started conversations. If you look online, there's still photos on Flickr. I don't even know if Flickr is still live. I think it is.
Yeah.
But there was 25, 30 people that got the whole set. There was hundreds of conversations of people asking to meet at this restaurant or this coffee shop so they could trade these cards. We created demand that this was going to be something cool. This was worth your time. And again, it started hundreds, if not thousands, of conversations about FreshBooks that wasn't product related. One of the things I preach all the time, and this is something I kind of perfected at FreshBooks, was You mentioned it's accounting, it's a boring product. I actually don't think FreshBooks is that boring, but it is accounting, and it's something that is more of a pain point for people than a pleasure. But if you were to have a conversation from A to Z about all the features of FreshBooks, one, it's a short conversation, and two, it's really boring. So we almost never talked about the product. We created all these experiences around the brand that got other people to talk about their experiences with the product, and they would sell the product for us, to their groups. One of the things you asked, what are some of the stunts you've done, or biggest stunts? Like I said, I forget them because there are just so many. But one of the things we did at FreshBooks was, if you're familiar with Tupperware parties, a person invites 20 of their friends over. They do demos of Tupperware. They sell them and whatever. We created FreshBooks Tupperware parties where we got, I don't remember the number now, but for the sake of, this discussion, I'll make up a number, say 1,000 people. 1,000 people had Tupperware parties in their house. And what that was we sent them a box of Tupperware, and in it was, some coupons for FreshBooks, some stickers, some T-shirts, all the materials they would need to host a FreshBooks demo in their house. And when they posted it online and we saw that they actually came through and hosted this little party, we sent them $20, PayPal or whatever, however we did it. And that was to cover the snacks and the food. So we paid them to do these events, but we made sure they did it first before we paid them and stuff like that. But 1,000 people inviting 10 of their small business friends into their home to pitch this product, and then maybe they watch The Bachelor after or whatever, shared some pie or pizza on us. That's cool because we saw a real uptick in conversion on these things. So when you say, if you were to go in and pitch somebody, say, I'm going to get 1,000 people to be a silent sales force for you. That's a really, hard sell through. So luckily at FreshBooks, I had a pretty unique situation where I could just do stuff, and, sort of figured it out after if it worked or not. 90% of the time it works. So we're able to do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. But it's all about, changing the conversation. It's all about changing the way people look at your brand, creating affinity for your brand, creating, a brand that people see themselves in, they're emotionally connected to, because those brands are allowed to make mistakes every once in a while. If you don't have that relationship, it's like, your product goes, offline or doesn't deliver on promises, they just go to your competition. So word of mouth is as much about retention and loyalty as it is customer acquisition. It's, it really is something that everybody should be focusing on and investing in, whether it's with me or not. But man, it's so interesting to see companies discount word of mouth and they think it just happens organically. It does happen organically, but at like 2% of what it could be. And people think, word of mouth is just that thing. But word of mouth is a discipline, and it's a decision, and it really is a philosophy that companies should embrace a lot more than they do.
So last question for you. What people need to start doing tomorrow for their personal brand that they're not thinking about, they're not doing at the moment?
So quickest answer is do cool stuff and tell people. I'm fascinated by, so you look at my LinkedIn, and I'll admit it's kind of gross because I only talk about myself, but why wouldn't I? My goal with LinkedIn is to put myself in the best position as possible for projects or opportunities and stuff like that. So I do something, I have a little success, I get featured in a magazine or on a website, I'm going to put it everywhere. I think if you really want to build an interesting personal brand, there's a lot of steps to it, and there's a lot of different things you have to do. But the simplest thing is don't be humble. Don't be shy. Because honestly, and it took me a long time to realize this, nobody cares. Nobody cares about you. Nobody cares about me. And I'm okay with that. It's not someone else's job to to elevate my brand. It's my job. So any little success I have, any little opportunity, when this hits, I'll be sharing this link for a week. There's a lot of people who say, oh, I did this one thing, and they talk about it once. Well, I believe that anything good should be shared 8 times. It may not be 8 times in a row, but you got to share this stuff over and over and over, because only a fraction of your followers see it at any one time. And if somebody sees it 2 times or 3 times, whatever, hopefully there's enough other content that they'll allow you to fill your feed with things. Nobody's reading your feed from top to bottom. They're seeing, when it pops up in your thing. So yeah. So, and I'll share things 10, 12 times. I might a week later go back and delete some of the old ones just to clean up the feed a little bit. But man, do cool things. Tell everybody. Simplest piece of advice I could give you. If you want to talk for 2 more hours, I could talk to you about building your personal brand. But where to start? Do cool things. Tell people.
We'll have to do another part of that. But Saul, thank you so much. This was great chatting with you. Nice meeting you. And for the listeners, guys, another off the record episode with a great founder. And hope now you know more about word of mouth and how to do some of the cool stuff on marketing. For more questions, definitely reach out to Saul. We'll link your info below in the show notes. And obviously, we're going to tag you and do all the self-promotion. Thanks, guys, for watching. We'll see you in the next one.